There's this odd phenomenon that kicks in when you start truly coming to. And when I say coming to, I don't just mean popping your eyes open at dawn or sipping a steaming mug of joe. I'm talking about the point where you pierce right through the illusion, where the fog of everyday awareness thins out and you get a peek at the real deal unfolding. It's downright enchanting, if you ask me. But the part no one warns you about is this. After that peak, after savoring that taste of liberation, some experiences just aren't meant for spilling out. Not like they're cloaked in some esoteric whisper-quiet secrecy, but because unloading them is akin to funneling the sea into a dainty saucer, it flat-out fails. Worse yet, pushing it can stir up more muddle than illumination. So, allow me to outline 5 elements that, if you're spiritually attuned, you ought to keep under wraps. Not from any ego-driven superiority or membership in an elite circle, but because these aren't the sort of tidbits that travel like standard chit-chat. They're more akin to the aroma wafting from a bloom. You could wax poetic about it endlessly, but until they inhale it firsthand, it remains elusive. First off, never divulge your raw encounter with enlightenment proper. Right after it hits, there's this overwhelming impulse to broadcast it far and wide. You feel like shaking folks by the arms and shouting, "Hey, check it out, I've caught the essence. It's right under our noses." We've all been staring off in the entirely wrong spot. But what occurs when you act on that? The listener stares back, blending bewilderment with worry. They offer a courteous dip of the head, maybe even chime in that it's great for you. Deep down, though, they're wondering if you've lost your marbles a tad. Why so? Because enlightenment isn't a notion or a theory you can hand off from brain to brain like a foolproof cookie recipe. It's an embodied truth. Think of the gap between poring over tales of diving and plunging into the waves yourself. When you attempt to convey the waves to a dry landlubber, what lands? Mere chatter, empty noise. The sensation of liquid embracing you, flowing against your skin, that defies words altogether. I remember this fellow who underwent what you'd term a deep mystical shift. Strolling through the yard as dusk fell, abruptly the whole scene turned see-through. He realized he wasn't some isolated entity traversing the greenery. Instead, the act of tending the land was all there was. No stroller, no plot of earth. Simply the seamless flow of cultivation. Overjoyed, he dashed inside to relay it to his spouse. Her response? "Lovely, love. Oh, and mind the trash on your way out." She simply couldn't absorb his revelation, sans her own dive into it. It's comparable to depicting crimson to a sightless soul from birth. You might rattle off light frequencies or evoke the warmth it stirs, yet you can't impart the vivid hue itself, and enlightenment's nuances eclipse even that subtlety. So, if you keep pressing to convey it, you start coming across as boastful. "Oh, I've unlocked this stunning revelation. I've grasped the core of existence." Boom! Instant rift. You've cast yourself as the enlightened sage here, them as the slumbering soul there. And just like that, you've undermined the very unity you aimed to express. No splits, no divides, no us versus them. The enlightened soul masters silence on their revelation, not from phony humility, but from grasping that words are merely a digit aimed at the lunar glow. The digit guides, if they're keen to follow its aim, but if they fixate on the digit alone, the celestial light slips away unnoticed, and when you attempt to unveil your shift, most latch onto that digit. They probe your steps to enlightenment, craving the ritual, the approach, the hidden ritual. Yet enlightenment arose not from your efforts, but from ceasing the fuss and beholding the ever-present. Next, steer clear of revealing the precise routines or paths that clicked for you. Sounds counterintuitive, right? If they sparked something in your world, why not pass them along to help? Well, catch this. What ignited for you suited your exact spot in life then. It meshed with your disposition, your circumstances, your unique brand of bewilderment. Picture nursing a pounding skull with a specific remedy, and poof, the pain vanishes. Does that imply every headache sufferer should pop the identical pill? Hardly. One's throb stems from stress, another's from skimping on rest, yet another's from thirst. That same remedy might not every approach suits everyone. In fact, some methods could even damage certain individuals. Spiritual disciplines operate in precisely the same manner. What leads one individual toward profound insight might ensnare another in mere mechanics. I could settle into stillness, observing my breathing, and in that simple observation pierce the veil of the isolated ego. Yet, if I insist that you must do the same, you could waste years in that posture, achieving nothing simply because your inner tangle differs from mine. A disciple once approached his mentor and declared, "Teacher, for 5 years I've practiced meditation exactly as you directed, yet enlightenment eludes me." The teacher chuckled and replied, "Maybe it's time you quit meditating." The student recoiled in surprise. "But you commanded me to meditate." "Indeed," the teacher agreed, "and now I'm advising you to cease. You've transformed meditation into just another pursuit, another attempt to attain what you believe you're lacking. Cease the effort to attain awakening, and discover if you're not already awake. The issue is, as soon as you hand someone a technique, they convert it into an objective. They assume that flawless execution of the practice will grant them illumination. This distances them even more from true realization than before, since they've invented a distant point in time when they envision wholeness. But enlightenment isn't awaiting in the future. It's solely in the present. It's recognizing what's right here, not fabricating something fresh. The third element you should never disclose are your perceptions regarding others. Upon awakening, you start perceiving people with striking clarity. You discern their facades, their manipulations. You recognize when fear drives someone's actions, when they're shielding a persona, or when they're entangled in their personal narrative. A strong urge arises to assist by highlighting these truths. However, this usually proves unwise. The reason? Individuals aren't prepared to confront themselves until the moment arrives. And when it does, they'll uncover it on their own. They don't require your words. Telling them prematurely often sparks defensiveness and bitterness. Consider it like this. Imagine spotting a butterfly laboring to break free from its chrysalis. You might think, quote 5, but doing so would doom the butterfly. The reason lies in how the effort to escape builds the strength in its wings. Lacking that challenge, flight becomes impossible. Similarly, people must grapple with their own bewilderments at their own pace. An unsolicited revelation from you, delivered too soon, could genuinely injure them. I recall a time spent with a companion who ranted endlessly about the injustice he'd faced at his job. He'd been overlooked for advancement, and he was certain his superior harbored a grudge. In reality, I perceived the situation plainly. My friend carried an air of superiority, a habit of brushing off colleagues' suggestions that rendered him challenging to collaborate with. That was the true barrier to his promotion. Did I voice this observation? Absolutely not, since he sought affirmation for his tale of victimhood, not honest self-examination. Had I remarked, "In truth you come across as haughty and aloof," the outcome would have been predictable. He'd have bristled, possibly severed our bond, and remained blind to the reality because the timing wasn't right. Instead, I simply heard him out, offering understanding sounds. Then, months afterward, with no nudge from me, he abruptly noted, You know, I realize now I was probably tough to team up with back then. The realization emerged organically within him once he was prepared. Those who have awakened come to rely on this organic unfolding. They avoid dashing about in attempts to illuminate others. They grasp that awareness blooms on its own schedule, much like a bloom unfurling at dawn. You can't pry the petals apart. You merely cultivate suitable surroundings and then retreat. The fourth item you must withhold is your encounter with the void, the vast emptiness, the core instability of being. This ranks as potentially the riskiest revelation, as it might profoundly unsettle those unready for it. Truly awakening reveals that solidity is an illusion everywhere. What seemed enduring and tangible dissolves into something akin to a rhythm, a current, an unfolding. Even your core identity, which appears so steadfast and unbroken, resembles a stream more closely. We speak of a stream's existence, yet grasping at it yields only liquid slipping away. The stream isn't an object, it's an occurrence. Such understanding can prove utterly freeing. It signifies you're not trapped in the role you imagine for yourself. Your troubles, your worries, your meticulously built selves drift by like mist in the heavens. But for those yet to glimpse this, it rings with dread. It echoes as if you're claiming insignificance for all, that existence. It's pointless, this idea that we're nothing more than chaotic clusters of particles drifting aimlessly without any real meaning. I once foolishly attempted to convey this to a coworker during a meal. He was chatting about his ambitions ahead, the goals he aimed to reach, the individual he hoped to evolve into. In a moment of poor judgment, I remarked that there's truly no, quote, eight, capable of accomplishing those feats. What you label as yourself is merely a recurring pattern, a mental routine. It doesn't exist in the solid manner you assume it does. He stared at me like I'd just confessed to plotting a heist. Quote, 9. He shot back. Quote, 10. Soon enough, he grew visibly agitated. He believed I was erasing his very being, rendering his existence pointless. In reality, my intent was to affirm his reality, just not in the isolated, enclosed form he pictured. He's not some detached entity locked inside a flesh container. Instead, he's the entire cosmos manifesting through a unique configuration known as himself. Yet he couldn't grasp that notion, since it challenged his core sense of self. Lacking a firm identity anchor, he feared total disintegration. That's precisely why profound sages across eras have been selective about revealing their most profound wisdom. They recognize these insights function like remedies. Delivered appropriately in the proper moment, they cure. Administered incorrectly or untimely, they toxify. The reality of voidness, the abyss, the inherent instability of being. One must ease into this reality with care and patience, lest it demolish a person's reality before they're equipped to reconstruct it. And the final prohibition: withhold your realization of profound liberation and the reason you no longer adhere to standard norms and ethics. Upon enlightenment, it becomes clear that every guideline, every obligation or prohibition, every ethical framework and societal norm is merely a pact, a collective pretense we've opted into. You perceive your liberty to participate or withdraw at will. However, proclaiming this aloud, declaring transcendence over right and wrong, abandonment of traditional ethics because it's all fabricated, will alarm others. They'll view you as a threat, convinced you'll resort to theft or violence now that moral boundaries no longer bind you. What escapes them is that genuine liberty isn't license for damage. In true awakening, you discern that injuring another equates to self-inflicted wounds, given the illusion of division. The individual you wound is simply another facet of the identical awareness that constitutes you. Thus, compassion arises effortlessly and instinctively, not enforced by decree, but emerging organically from perceiving interconnectedness. An authentically liberated soul honors the essence of justice while unbound by its rigid form. They behave ethically, driven neither by dread of repercussions nor anticipation of benefits, but because ethical conduct is the natural outcome of unclouded vision. Their benevolence stems not from moral superiority, but from the absurdity of self-assault, akin to slapping your own cheek. Yet attempt conveying this to those who attribute ethics to outside forces, divine decree, communal pressure, or universal edicts, and they'll balk. They can't fathom coexisting moral detachment with ethical behavior. It strikes them as illogical. Consequently, they suspect deception regarding your liberty or latent depravity awaiting eruption. The enlightened individual conforms to societal expectations, fully aware of their artificiality. They engage in the charade to avoid needless discord and bewilderment. They settle debts, respect road regulations, interact courteously, not out of compulsion, but for the sake of simplicity and accord. Picture a seasoned performer who recognizes the stagecraft, yet invests fully in the role. There it is, then. 5 elements to guard if you've attained spiritual clarity. Your first-hand encounter with enlightenment, your personal techniques and approaches, your perceptions of fellow humans, your grasp of void and instability, and your detachment from everyday ethics. Does this silence all spiritual discourse? Hardly. Distinguish between gesturing toward a truth and declaring ownership of it, between proposing an option and dictating a verdict. The enlightened one converses, yet with subtlety. They hint instead of declare. They beckon rather than dictate. They grasp that language serves as pointers toward the lunar glow, and they avoid mistaking the digit for the celestial orb. Above all, perhaps they've discovered the profoundest lesson resides beyond utterance. It dwells in their essence, in their navigation of life, in their mirth, their quietude, their unadorned existence. People may fail to grasp your words on enlightenment, but they instinctively sense it in the company of someone truly awakened. They perceive it as a serene calm, an open vastness, an intuition that this individual dwells comfortably within the cosmos in a manner few others do. So keep your awakening to yourself. Don't broadcast it. Instead, embody it through your actions. Rely on the knowledge that those primed for their own shift will awaken naturally. Not from any prodding on your part, but because awareness is stirring alive within every one of us. In our personal rhythms, through our unique paths. You're not the guide who sparks it. You're simply one more facet of the ongoing emergence that's eternally unfolding. And if someone approaches with real interest and openness, eager to learn, then go ahead and share freely. But do so humbly, like a wanderer pointing out food to another in need, rather than a conqueror instructing the lost on their route. Because here's the profound truth: there's no place left to reach. We're right here already. We've never been anywhere else. All we're doing is immersing ourselves in this extraordinary charade of disconnection.